Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer. Thanks to Frank Karsten for this one. Amy controls Taigam, Master Opportunist, and she evokes a Solitude. Does she have to sacrifice the Solitude token when it comes into play? What about the original Solitude when it comes off suspend? I really like that Frank Karsten asked this question because I recall during a conversation at a MagicCon, he mentioned that he liked how I always put the CR citations up on screen in my videos, a sentiment that many other of my viewers have also echoed. Now, that's important for this question because the only way to get an answer is to look at the exact text for evoke in the comprehensive rules. And to see what I mean, let's take a look at this corpse connoisseur. Now, it turns out that unearth does not interact with Taigam at all, and that's because if you look in the CR definition for unearth, you can see that it does not count as casting a spell. Unearth is actually activating an activated ability. Now, as I mentioned in my video on how unclaimed territory interacts with unearth, there's no way to tell which keywords officially count as casting a spell versus activating an ability or doing something else, unless you actually look up the text in the comprehensive rules. Evoke indeed does count as casting a spell, so it will interact with Taigam, but again, we'll need the actual CR text to see exactly how. We can see that when Solitude enters, if its evoke cost was paid, its controller sacrifices it. Additional and alternative costs are something that gets copied when you copy a spell, so that means the Solitude token that's entering is considered to have had its evoke cost paid, because that's the cost that was paid for the original that it was copying. Accordingly, the Solitude token will be sacrificed. Here's another relevant example. Let's say that we copied this Overlord of the Mistmoors. If you just go based on the reminder text, you might not think that the impending ability would apply. After all, it says, if you cast this spell for its impending cost. It isn't a creature. Copying the spell does not count as casting it, so we definitely did not cast this spell for its impending cost, nor for any other cost. However, if you look in the CR, you can see that impending actually looks at whether this permanent's impending cost was paid. As noted before, what cost was paid is one of the things that you copy when you're copying a spell. So if the original Overlord was cast via impending, the token will not be a creature until the last time counter is taken off. The reason for this discrepancy is that impending actually used to work the way its reminder text says. Wizards changed it to fix this interaction. It's not guaranteed that every keyword will work the same way though, nor that any given keyword won't have changed how it works since the card was first printed, underscoring the importance of checking the CR every time. Speaking of taking time counters off, here's a couple of suspend-specific rulings that you might want to know if you're playing this card. First, the reminder text on Taigam is right on point. If a creature card is cast via suspend, it has haste. If you're wondering why this is, it's because in Time Spiral, when Wizards of the Coast was internally testing this mechanic, people kept on attacking with their suspended creatures the turn they came into play. So they just made it so that this was legal. Now this was a great decision at the time, but it does mean that in the case where they're bringing suspend back as a random one-off, they need to put in that line in the reminder text because otherwise there's no way that anyone would know about that. Next, if you don't want to cast the spell that you've suspended, that is allowed. It'll just stay exiled with no time counters on it. Like impending, this is a change from previous rules. I talked about this more in my video with the 11th Doctor and 0 mana spells. Finally, let's close out with a couple of quick hits about how Taigam works more generally. If you want to play a counter spell against the second spell in response to Taigam's ability, the game can still use the last known information about the spell to generate the copy, so countering the original won't stop that. Just like it takes more than one counterspell to stop a storm spell. On the other hand, Taigam says to exile that spell with 4 time counters on it. Because countering a spell moves it off the stack, exiling the spell will not be possible anymore. So a counter spell in response to the ability would stop the suspended spell, just not the original also. Okay, well what about if we copy a Charring Bite? Well, with that on the stack, Omen spells have only the characteristics of the half that was cast, so the copy will have those same characteristics. On the other hand, when you're casting something off suspend, you can cast that spell any way that it would normally be legal for you to cast it. Now that means you could cast either Charring Bite or Twin Wasp Stormbrood. Both of those answers would be the exact same if we were talking about a split card, including the Room cards from Duskmourn. And I guess there actually is a couple of asterisks to that claim that you can cast the spell however you would normally be able to cast it. All related to the fact that Suspend has you cast the spell without paying its mana cost. For one, if X is in the mana cost, the only legal choice for X is 0. Additionally, it is not possible to use more than one alternative cost to cast a spell. Since without paying its mana cost counts as an alternative cost, that would mean that it is not possible, for example, to evoke a Solitude when it comes off suspend in order for you to force it into your graveyard. You still are able to pay additional costs though, including kicker and the sacrifice for stuff like worthy cost. In cases like the latter, where the additional cost is required, you would need to pay that cost unless you chose not to cast the spell off suspend. And finally, kind of a niche interaction, you can tell Doubling Season is definitely not a Jeskai card because Taigam does not work with this at all. It's true that a copied permanent spell becomes a token as it enters the battlefield, but this does not count as creating a token for the purposes of effects like Doubling Season. Check out my video on Brass Knuckles and Doubling Season for more info. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another Daily Ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.